It began like any other ordinary afternoon, one of those days when I came back home from the gym, completely exhausted and longing for a refreshing shower. The house was unusually silent, but not in a way that struck me as strange. As I stepped through the door, I noticed neither my mom nor my sister were around. It was just me. Nothing out of the ordinary, considering that for years, this was the norm. Ever since my dad passed away 5 years ago, the quietness of the house had become familiar. I didn't dwell on it much, it was just how life had evolved. As always, I headed straight for the bathroom, sweat clinging to my skin from the workout. In my rush, I realized I'd forgotten to grab a change of clothes for after my shower. It didn't bother me. After all, no one was home. I figured I'd just shower quickly, and they wouldn't return for some time. Leaving my clothes in the middle of the house, I made my way to the bathroom. The hot water cascading over me was invigorating, washing away the fatigue of the day. I lingered longer than usual, savoring the momentary peace. There was no need to hurry, so I thought. But time, as I would soon discover, had other plans. Stepping out of the shower, completely bare, I grabbed a towel and headed into the living room, expecting the house to be as empty as it was earlier. But to my shock, there they were, my mom and sister, sitting on the couch. They looked just as stunned as I felt. In that frozen moment, the weight of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't expected anyone to come home, much less find them there, where my discarded clothes lay. My heart stopped, and for what felt like an eternity, silence filled the room. Their wide-eyed expressions mirrored my own embarrassment. I couldn't speak, couldn't even think straight. All I could do was grab my clothes in a panic, my face burning red with shame, and bolt to my room. Once inside, I locked the door, leaning against it as I tried to process the mortifying event. My mind raced, questioning how I could have been so careless. It was, without a doubt, the most awkward experience of my life. The following days passed, and I convinced myself everything was fine. I told myself they'd probably forgotten or chosen to move past it. After all, it was a one-off, awkward moment, and life had a way of returning to normal. Yet, there was something I couldn't shake, a subtle but persistent tension in the air, like a shadow lingering just beyond sight. The first sign of this came from my sister's behavior. She seemed different, her actions toward me carrying an undertone I couldn't quite put my finger on. I brushed it off initially, thinking I was imagining things. But as the days went on, the feeling persisted. One evening, I was lost in a video game, the rhythmic sound of button clicks filling my room as I focused on the virtual world before me. That's when I heard the door creak open. Turning, I saw my sister standing there, a mischievous grin on her face. At first, it seemed like any other moment of playful banter. She teased me as she always did, her laughter filling the room. But something about her demeanor felt different. Her touches lingered just a moment too long, and the usual carefree dynamic between us seemed to carry an unfamiliar edge. I told myself it was nothing, that she was just being her usual playful self. But as her hand brushed my shoulder and back more often, I couldn't ignore the growing unease within me. Something had changed since that fateful day, and I couldn't decide if I was imagining it or if there was more beneath the surface. The tension came to a head when her hand brushed against my arm one more time, and I finally snapped out of my game-induced focus. "Mia, stop," I said sharply, louder than I intended. Her laughter faded, replaced by an expression I couldn't read, a mix of surprise and something else entirely. "What's the matter, Jay?" she asked, her tone carrying a subtle challenge. "Can't take a little teasing?" Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself and replied, "You have to forget what you saw that day." My voice was firm, carrying the weight of my discomfort. I needed her to understand that some things were better left in the past, unspoken and untouched. She stopped, giving me a mock-offended look, but her smirk held a hint of something unfamiliar. The atmosphere in the room shifted once more, leaving me questioning everything that had transpired since that embarrassing moment. With a dramatic flourish, she crossed her arms and fixed her gaze on me. The usual lightheartedness in her eyes was gone, replaced by a playful yet determined glare. "How could you stop? How could you forget what you saw?" she teased, lifting an eyebrow with a smirk and tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I've never seen anything bigger like that. This awesome thing you have, and you're my brother, don't you want to share it with me? Come on, just let me try it already." I rolled my eyes, but she wasn't done. She had clearly thought this through. Tilting her head as if about to deliver the final blow, she added, "Besides, Mom even said she wants to try it. And also, my father did not have this size. Go ask her if you don't believe me." She looked so confident, throwing in her favorite tactic, Mom's approval. She knew I'd find it hard to argue with that. I ran over to my mom in shock, practically stumbling over my words. "Mom, what on earth is she talking about? Did she say that?" My voice trailed off as I tried to process what I had just heard. My mom looked at me, a bit taken aback but still composed. She gave a little chuckle and said, "Well, she's actually right. I'm 55 years old, and believe it or not, I've never seen a size like this before either." Until one day, she finally came to me. Her voice was soft but filled with a quiet determination. She looked at me with a mixture of hope and sadness in her eyes and said, "Come on, we're your family. We love you and we want you to be with us. Don't shut us out." She took a deep breath before continuing.
"It's been hard without your father. He passed away 5 years ago, and I've been left to hold everything together on my own. I tried my best, but there are so many moments when I feel completely overwhelmed. Some days are just so lonely, and I could really use someone to lean on, someone who understands. I've missed you so much, and I know your father would have wanted us to stay close, to support each other." She looked down for a moment as if gathering the courage to go on, and then spoke again. Her voice was now tinged with a sense of urgency. "Your sister, she's almost 23 now. She's young, but she's been struggling too. She's never really had anyone to depend on. No boyfriend, no close friend she can truly count on. She's just alone." Her voice softened as she squeezed my hand. "We're not asking for a lot. I promise you'll enjoy it. You'll feel that sense of belonging again. It's what we all need, and I believe it's what you need too." She looked at me with a quiet intensity that made me feel like time had paused. Then, without any warning, she reached for the hem of my shirt. Her fingers were steady but quick, slipping beneath the fabric and lifting it up before I could even understand her intentions. My shirt was gone. Her movements were deliberate, yet there was a tenderness in them, as if she was acting on some impulse that she herself didn't entirely understand. I was frozen, my mind racing in an attempt to piece together what was happening. But it was as though my body had lost the ability to react. Every small gesture she made, her fingers brushing my skin, the way she tilted her head as she moved, seemed to carry an unspoken message that I was struggling to decipher. Then she began to unbutton her own shirt. Her hands moved slowly, almost carefully, as each button came undone. Her gaze never left mine, and I could feel my heart pounding, my breath caught somewhere between shock and intrigue. I didn't know what to say or if there was anything I should say. I didn't make a single move, unable to break the spell that had taken over the room. As she continued, a surreal atmosphere enveloped us, like we were both suspended in a place where words no longer had meaning, where actions spoke louder than anything we could possibly say. I wanted to ask her what was going on, wanted to understand the reason behind this sudden shift, but my voice felt trapped in my throat. All I could do was watch as she peeled away the last layers of clothing. It felt like each movement was somehow slow and yet impossibly fast, as if time itself was bending. I was still just trying to comprehend what was happening, to make sense of the emotions swirling in my head. Curiosity, disbelief, a touch of apprehension. It was all happening so quickly, yet every second felt like it stretched out, hanging in the air, leaving me in a state of wonder and confusion. The moment I laid eyes on them without any clothing, something changed in me entirely. It was as if the world paused for a beat, drawing my attention to every detail of their bare skin. The way it caught the light, the soft curves and lines that seemed to invite my touch. It wasn't just an impulse. It was a slow-building need that I could feel in every fiber of my being, a craving that surprised even me. Thoughts of restraint began to blur, fading into the background as a more primal urge took center stage. In that instant, the only thing that seemed real was the space between us and the undeniable pull I felt toward them. My mind raced, filled with images of what it would feel like. The texture of their skin under my fingertips, the warmth that I could almost sense radiating from them. It was a magnetic draw that was both thrilling and consuming, leaving me feeling like I was on the edge of something I couldn't quite name but deeply yearned to experience. I felt my heart pounding faster. My breathing grew shallow as the desire to bridge that gap, to reach out, to touch, to feel intensified. Every rational thought melted away, replaced by a single powerful longing that I had never experienced with such intensity before. The room around us seemed to fade into obscurity, leaving only the three of us in this charged moment. It wasn't just about the physical desire. It was something deeper, a connection that felt almost inevitable, as if every choice I had made had led me right here to this moment. In that space, all I could think about was the touch, the sensation, and the electric connection waiting to be sparked between us. Without a moment's hesitation, we dove headfirst into fulfilling our deepest desires, barely stopping to consider what might come of it. Each urge, each hidden wish felt like it had finally clawed its way to the surface, demanding attention. The excitement and freedom of acting on them were all-consuming, like an intoxicating rush that swept us away from any sense of caution or hesitation. It felt exhilarating, liberating even, to ignore the usual voices of reason, the caution whispers that might have otherwise held us back. We were caught in a whirlwind, a powerful momentum that pushed us forward with each choice, no matter how reckless. Each decision fed the sense that we were unstoppable, untouchable, driven by a mix of excitement, impatience, and perhaps even a touch of defiance. After all, these desires were things we had fantasized about endlessly, imagining what life would be like if we dared to go after them with nothing to restrain us. And now it was all unfolding like a dream brought to life. But in that rush, we didn't consider the ripple effects that might be set in motion, the repercussions that might come back to confront us. The consequences were vague, distant notions, shadows we didn't want to acknowledge, much less confront. It felt as though the future could wait. What mattered was seizing this fleeting sense of freedom, as if time itself might stop for us just long enough to let us indulge in that moment. Each action felt justified, even necessary, like a piece of ourselves that had been hidden was finally being set free. And so we continued, driven only by the thrill of experiencing everything we had longed for, racing ahead with hearts wide open and minds shut tightly to the potential cost of our actions.